Welcome to the 5-Pack, where we talk about the 5 things that matter, 5 things that will matter, and a daily pack rip. Here is your host, Kyle Elfrink.
Welcome in on a Friday to the 5-Pack. Kyle Elfrink with you at the Better Sports Network. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I can tell you this, we are jam-packed with 5 things that mattered, 5 things that will matter, and of course our pack break coming up over the next hour. If you are new to us here at BSN, thank you. Good to have you with us. We are here, or I am here, each and every weekday from 12 to 1 o'clock Eastern, where we give you a recap of what you might have missed from the night before, what you should care about going into the night to come. And of course, we have some fun as we rewind the clock back to our young days of ripping open packs of cards. Today, we will break out of the baseball world, doing a lot of baseball this week, and we'll give a little love to the world of hockey. And we'll give specifically love to ProSet hockey. 1990. This is a set that I think when it was all said and done had like over 700 cards in it, which was immense. I mean, that's unheard of for a hockey set. You know, back in the day, baseball sets would be 750, but hockey, you never saw that. But ProSet said, why the hell not? We're new to the game. Let's give everybody a card. This is also a set, maybe more so than any other mainstream, highly produced set out there. This set of cards has errors all over it. Misspellings. They've got a player's name, but the pitcher is not of that player. There are color screw-ups. This set is notorious for a load of errors. Now, a lot of times, errors can be worth a lot of money. But many of these errors, they were so overproduced, they're not worth money. It's almost like ProSet saw they screwed it up and said, what the heck? Just let it be. Let it be. One of the good ones, though, deals, and I'll talk about this before we rip the pack open. Paul Gillis, I think it is, or Gillis. There is 2 cards of him. One features Paul Gillis. It's fine. Looks like him. Nothing's weird. The quote-unquote air card features the wrong uniform number on the front of the card. His uniform says 23. At the bottom of the card, it says he's like number 37. But beyond that, and even more fascinating, is in the air of the Paul Gillis, or the rarer version of the Paul Gillis card. He's got a nose that is pouring blood out of it. In the mainstream card, they airbrushed his bloody nose out of the photo. But a few years back, somebody stumbled upon a card where he was bleeding out of his nose. I guess ProSet thought in 1990 they should protect the kids. So the mainstream card, the regular card, has the blood airbrushed out. The air card, if you will, has the blood still intact. So maybe we'll get that. Who knows? We will get to that later in the show. Let us begin with the 5 things that mattered from the Thursday that was. And I will note, we're kind of covering all of our bases today with some baseball, some basketball, some hockey, even some football coming your way over our next 10 items. We begin at the Diamond with some off-the-field news. We obviously talked about it yesterday on the 5-Pack. Max Scherzer, the suspension came down from Major League Baseball. It will be a 10-game set down for Max Scherzer. He will not appeal, which you don't often see in Major League Baseball. Usually every suspension, they say, no. And usually every suspension, it drops. You know, if it's 10 games, maybe it's 8 games, maybe it's 6 games, but it almost always drops. So why not the appeal? Well, I've got my thoughts, but let's hear the thoughts of the Mets manager, Buck Showalter, first.
I think Max decided to do what was best for our team, and that's all you need to know about Max. And it's important for him to try to give us the best chance to be as competitive as we can be while he's out, because we're going to be operating at 12 pitchers. So the sooner it's not hanging around and that we can have an understanding of what we need to deal with. So in his mind, the sooner the better. And with the some things reduced, that was good.
Like I said, usually everybody appeals these things. And we heard from Scherzer yesterday. He was adamant. Oh, it's nothing but rosin and sweat, rosin and sweat. Now, I gave my thoughts on that. Yeah, it probably was rosin and sweat, but he was caking it on. He was taking it to the next level. So he's not going to appeal. Why? Because if you're swearing innocence, and if you know that the process usually ends up with fewer games for the suspension, why wouldn't you appeal? Well, I have my own theories on this. Let me give you that theory. Max Scherzer now gets 10 days off from throwing. Max Scherzer just 5 days ago was dealing with a sore back. Max Scherzer has not looked very good this season. Beyond that, Max Scherzer really is only going to miss one start. Now, how does that work, Kyle? Well, he threw on Wednesday. 10-game suspension went in place yesterday. He was not going to pitch this weekend in the 4-game set against San Francisco. So those games don't matter. Mets then have a day off on Monday. They come back on Tuesday. Scherzer was scheduled to pitch on Tuesday. Would have been against the Washington Nationals. Now, fantasy owners would have loved that, but do the Mets have to have Max Scherzer on the hill to beat the Nationals? They don't. So he misses his spot against the Nationals. Good for his personal marks, perhaps, but the Mets can survive it, right? Then, after the Nationals, it's a 4-game set with Atlanta. Now, wouldn't you love to have Max Scherzer back for the games against the Braves? Yes, you need Max Scherzer against the Braves. Guess what? He will be available and off the suspended list to pitch the 4th and final game against the Braves. So, in effect, he doesn't miss that series. Whether he had pitched the first game, the second game, the third game, or now the 4th game, he still gets to pitch against the Atlanta Braves. If you appeal, and again, I love this little theory, so bear with me here. If you're Max Scherzer and you appeal, okay, the suspension is off. You got to go in front of the league. They're in New York. Obviously, the Mets come back from San Francisco. Scherzer would be eligible for this weekend. But again, he's not scheduled to pitch. There's no reason that you'd want Max Scherzer to be eligible. He's not even scheduled to pitch. So you come back to New York. Let's say you have your hearing on Monday. And let's say on Monday night or Tuesday morning, baseball comes out and says, you know what, we'll drop it to 8 games. We'll drop it to 7 games, to 6 games, whatever. We'll drop. Well, then the suspension kicks in on Tuesday. Again, you still miss the start against Washington, but what else happens? You miss the start against the Braves. So there is a strategy at work here with Max Scherzer. Now, it has nothing to do with guilt or innocence, right? Nothing to do with it. This has everything to do with the schedule. Max wasn't going to pitch against San Francisco. Who cares about the 4 games he's suspended for this week? Next week against Washington, the Mets can make do against the Nationals. They can give up that 1 start with Scherzer. And by not appealing, he makes it certain that he is available for that 4th and final game against the Atlanta Braves. So there you go. That is why you don't appeal. Now, coming up here in about 15, 20 minutes, Mark Malusis, he's got his thoughts on the Scherzer suspension, but those are mine. The strategy is in place. You accept the 10 games, you take it immediately, and you're back for the Braves. Because that's the big game. That's the game you don't want to miss, is that game against the Braves. Let's move to our second item of things that mattered from yesterday. Kind of on that opposite end of the spectrum, you know, Scherzer is still kind of good. Scherzer is still an all-star. Scherzer is still making a lot of money. A guy who is not is Madison Bumgarner, who no longer is employed by any team in baseball. I guess you could say he's sort of employed, like he's still going to get a check from the Arizona Diamondbacks. But yesterday, the struggling veteran, the left-hander, was DFA'd by the Arizona Diamondbacks. We've got some audio here from the assistant general manager of Arizona, a guy by the name of Mike Fitzgerald. He was on KTAR radio in Phoenix and had this to say about Mad Bum, who currently has an ERA that is well north of 10 on the season.
Potentially. I think he's frustrated, right? Nobody, at this level, the competitiveness of these guys is extremely high. And so nobody wants to go out there and feel like you're not pitching to the standard that you're being held to and that your teammates are being held to and that a lot of them are going out and delivering on. So I think there's definitely a level of frustration. I think with that, anybody struggles to find success over a prolonged period of time. It would shock me if confidence doesn't play into that and contribute to that. So I think that definitely plays a role.
Again, that's audio courtesy of KTAR Radio in Phoenix. Mike Fitzgerald, the assistant general manager. That was actually before the decision came down to DFA Bumgarner. He's been bad this year. 0-3, 10-2-6 is the ERA. The whip is 2.4. He's striking out less than 5.5 batters per 9. 8 walks per, he's off. He's bad. Now, this is how baseball works. He is still owed $37 million. As long as he doesn't retire, let's just say he sits around and goes back to, what was he doing? Horseback riding? Rodeos? Yeah, Madison Bumgarner was doing rodeos. Maybe he just goes back to the rodeo circuit. He's still getting $37 million from the Diamondbacks. As of now, I can't see a team picking up Madison Bumgarner. Any team can. He'll have to go through waivers, all that, and then officially he'll be released. I don't know that we've seen the last of Madison Bumgarner. He isn't even 34 yet. So recall, he'll turn 34, I think, in like a month or so. But he's not all that old. But he was a guy, and this was kind of wild. I was looking at his numbers. Madison Bumgarner has not made an All-Star game. He has not gotten a Cy Young vote, and he has not had a season with at least 10 victories since the end of 2016. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and it's looking like 23 too. This guy's kind of been a, at best, average pitcher. And the last few years, he has been well below average. And this is a guy that when you look at his first 6 years, was like the best in baseball. And it's crazy. Like, we still have the Verlanders and the Scherzers out there. You know, they're doing their thing into the upper 30s, early 40s, but they're really rare. Madison Bumgarner had immense success, crazy success in his first 6 years. After 6 years of being a Major League Baseball pitcher, and with how awesome he had been in the postseason, with, 2 World Series titles, I think, at that point, Madison Bumgarner was on a track to Cooperstown. He totally was. But since then, he is 34-57 with a 4.31 ERA. That's the last 6+ years. And you will be shocked if you look at his numbers over the 6 years. They're bad for Matt. He fell off a cliff. Like I said, no All-Star games. He hasn't gotten a Cy Young vote. For the first 6 years, he did that every year. And he was racking up double-digit victories, and it's just gone. It's just adios. Now, what we need to note here as well is there is a man in the minor leagues, Brandon Pfaadt. It's very weirdly spelled. I think Brandon Pfaadt is spelled Pfaadt, but it's fought, like fight. We fought. Brandon Pfaadt. He's at AAA, pitching really good. He's a top 50, top 60 Major League prospect. He probably will get the call in the next week or two. Don't think it's going to be immediate, but with Bumgarner out of the way, Diamondbacks are off to a good start as they continue their series against San Diego later tonight. Expect to see Brandon Pfaadt. His numbers are pretty good. I think last night he had 8 strikeouts in 7 shutout innings. He's doing it at AAA Reno, which is not an easy place to pitch. So for those who can maybe grab and stash, Brandon Pfaadt might be your guy. I would expect him up again probably by early May for Arizona. Speaking of youngsters, let's go to the LA Dodgers, who are getting great things from a rookie, a guy who might be our current leader for National League Rookie of the Year. Last night in Chicago, it was the James Outman show against the Cubs.
He awaits the 1-2 from Assad. Outman hit in the air to right field. James Outman gone. You said it, Oral, and James listened.
They're trying to crowd him, but that's not exceptional velocity, and if it doesn't get all the way in there.
On third base for the Dodgers, just 1 out. Outman puts a charge into one to right field. James Outman did you! Grand slam, and the Dodgers up 6-2 in the 9th.
Cubs go on for a 6-2 victory. James Outman with that 9th inning grand slam off Michael Fulmer. Doubt we'll be seeing Michael Fulmer in the 9th inning for some time with the Cubs. Check out Outman's numbers. These are good. These are strong. He's hitting 290. His on-base percentage is almost 400. His slug is almost 650. Okay, this is a great start. 5 homers, 15 ribbies, 12 runs, and 2 stolen bases. As far as I'm concerned, if like the vote was held today, this guy should be unanimous. Remember where the Dodgers were and what they needed. They needed a center fielder. They needed help in their outfield. This guy won his way onto the roster with a very good spring training. He is not an uber rookie, by the way. He's not like a 20 or 21-year-old. I think Outman's 24, 25. He's kind of been bouncing around, never been seen as a great prospect. But he is a veteran prospect, if you will. And the start has been spectacular. Key thing to note with Outman, his last 3 starts have all come in the leadoff spot for LA. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, those 3 games, all with Outman leading off, those were 3 games where Mookie Betts was not in the starting lineup. Mookie Betts has been leading off all season. Do the Dodgers go with the rookie at the top, or do they go with Betts? Betts will probably be in the lineup today. He was back last night from paternity leave, actually jumped into the game midstream and went and played shortstop, had a very good defensive play as well. So that Mookie Betts shortstop thing, it's happening with LA. But for Outman, the question is, where's he hit? Because before the injury, or I shouldn't say injury, before Betts missed these previous 3 games, Outman was like hitting 6th, hitting 7th. Wasn't playing against left-handers either. And that will still be a question mark. Will they let him play against lefties? He's been fine against them in his opportunities this year, but they've mostly set him against southpaws. So those are the questions. Does he lead off? Does he play against lefties? The start has been fabulous for James Outman. I mentioned the Rookie of the Year voting. Right now, he is your co-favorite for NL Rookie of the Year. He and Corbin Carroll over at DraftKings both are plus 275 for that Rookie of the Year honor. Jordan Walker of the Cardinals, he is at plus 450. So Outman was a guy who was well over 1,000. I think he was like probably plus 1,200, plus 1,500. Now he's all the way down to plus 275 because of the strong 3-week start. Moving on to our 4th item that mattered, we go to the world of football. News that just broke within the last hour. And it's going to be big news for those who are strong fantasy football fans. It's going to be big news for anybody doing a best ball draft right now. Word from the NFL, and this was first reported, I believe, by Adam Schefter of ESPN. But the Detroit Lions, they've got a gambling problem with that Detroit Lions roster, and it's affecting Jameson Williams. We have received word from the NFL that Jameson Williams, who will be entering his 2nd year in the NFL, has just received a 6-game suspension. Now, he is one of 4 Detroit Lions getting suspended. His fellow wide receiver, Stanley Berryhill, 6 games for him. Wide receiver Quintez Cephas, suspended for the year, and safety C.J. Moore, suspended for the year. Now, in the case of Cephas and Moore, the Lions have already released these guys. They're done with them. They're suspended for the year. Williams gets 6 games. He's the big name here. He's the one to talk about. Right now, if you look at the NFFC, the National Fantasy Football Championship, they've been doing drafts for 2-3 months now. Jameson Williams has been going as the 33rd wide receiver off the board. That means he's a wide receiver 3. And now we've just heard a 6-game suspension. He is sitting in the world of Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans. Those are kind of wide receivers in the early 30s. So we're kind of giving you the perspective of Jameson Williams. This guy was expected to be a starting fantasy wide receiver. Now we have a 6-game suspension for gambling. Now, if you're wondering, why did he only get 6 games and why did the other guys get a year? As far as we can tell, the other guys, the guys who got a full year, they bet on football. They bet on the NFL. In the case of Williams, there is no betting on football. So that's a big difference. He was given the suspension mainly because you can, I think, as far as I know, you can bet on like baseball or tennis or anything else you want as an NFL player. You just can't do the football stuff. It appears that Williams got a 6-game suspension because he was gambling at the team facilities, which that is a rule in the NFL. No matter what you're gambling on, you can't do it at the team facilities. So Williams and I suppose Berryhill, the other guy who got a 6-game suspension, they were both not nailed for betting on the NFL, but for betting on sports at the team facilities. Welcome to 2023. I'm speaking to an audience. Hell, I just ran through the odds for, James Outman to win the Rookie of the Year. We're speaking to an audience and we're speaking to a sports world that has gambling everywhere. And that includes these players. That includes every NFL player. And yes, you've got to have rules. And yes, the NFL has made their bed with DraftKings and FanDuel, and they're going to have these things at stadiums. It's everywhere. But you got to police. You got to make sure that the results and what's occurring on the field are not affected by that stuff off the field. And you may say, well, why would millionaires do this? Hey, I get it too. I don't know why they're doing it, but Calvin Ridley did it. Jamison Williams, Quintez Cephas, for whatever reason. They're not trying to throw games. I don't think that's the problem, or that they have any kind of super insight. They're just guys who are seeing commercials every 5 minutes saying, hey, bet on sports. And they're saying, hey, I'm a normal Joe. I can do that. You're not a normal Joe in the NFL. We can't do that. So a 6-game suspension. Now, we should note with Williams, he's only entering his 2nd year. Last year, he only played 6 games. He was coming off an ACL injury that he suffered in the final game of his collegiate career. So he only played 6 games with the Lions, but he did catch a 41-yard touchdown, I think, on his first catch as an NFL player. Didn't do much of anything after that. But he was penciled in this year to be the running mate with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown over 100 catches. Jamison Williams, who was the number 12 pick a year ago, he was seen as that number 2 for Detroit. And hey, the Lions are going to be hyped this year. Jared Goff and the ability to throw the football, all that stuff, they're seeing some hype this year. But some of that does hit the skids today. We should note, according to ESPN as well, some of the team personnel with the Lions, I think on the business side, not on the coaching side. But it sounds like over the previous month, Detroit has been dismissing some of their employees for gambling on football, because that's not allowed either. So, hey, the rule is the rule, and it's good to see that the NFL is tracking down those who are breaking the rules. And obviously we saw Calvin Ridley miss an entire season. Message sent, maybe not, because you still have guys doing it. So I would think in these early days of gambling becoming more and more a part of what we do and what the NFL kind of embraces, we will continue to see some mistakes. But again, that news just coming out earlier this morning, Jamison Williams, who as of now, and this will certainly change with the 6-game suspension, but he was seen as a top 35 wide receiver in terms of fantasy football, probably dropping to outside the top 50, if not further, now in fantasy football. Finally, our 5th thing that mattered from last night, a Toronto Maple Leafs turnaround. We brought this up going into last night. We said, hey, the Leafs, they got to do something in game 2. Game 1 was ugly. They were getting booed off the ice in that loss to Tampa Bay. Last night in game number 2, they came out to win. They came out to score, and they came out with a lot of goals, most of them thanks to John Tavares.
The Leafs so quick on the power play, didn't get a chance there either. Here's Riley, gets up, scores! John Tavares! The Lightning getting one back, but here comes Nylander, storming in Riley, back to Nylander, rebound, scores! John Tavares! He's got it behind the net. Piece there by Bogosian. Cycles it back towards Tavares. He'll walk out in front. Backhand stop. Held loose. Scores! At the end of the 5-on-3, so it's a 5-on-4 power play goal, and it's 7-2.
All the fans were happy last night in Toronto. Very different from how it was on Tuesday night in Toronto. Series is now tied up at 1 apiece. Game 3 is going to be on Saturday night in Tampa. That is a 7 o'clock drop of the puck. Morgan Riley, 4 assists in that game. Ilya Samsonov got the win in net. He's now 2-7 as a playoff goaltender. 20 saves on 22 shots. It was a must win. And it was great to see they came out and just pummeled the Lightning. I will say Victor Hedman wasn't available for Tampa. Eric Cernak, he was knocked out with that illegal headshot in game 1. Hedman's status is critical. That's like a Norris, winning level defenseman that you didn't have last night. See if he's back out there on Saturday. Series is 1-1. Toronto stopped the bleeding, but we've seen this before. It really means nothing until the Maple Leafs advance. Then we can talk about them slaying demons. Last night was probably just another chapter in the ongoing effort to slay those demons. Again, game 3 on Saturday night. The series odds have flip-flopped, by the way. Toronto is now -160 to win it. Tampa is +140. I think I'd still go with those Tampa numbers. They got the next 2 at their place. I like that at +140. Those are the 5 things that mattered from last night. When we return, we will get you set for your Friday with 5 things that will matter for this upcoming evening. Before any of that, let's hand it over to Mark. The Moose has his thoughts on the 10-game suspension for Max Scherzer.
In my mind, there is a difference between someone who is a habitual cheater and somebody that violated an MLB rule. I bring up Mets starting pitcher Max Scherzer. Why do I bring up Max Scherzer? Is for this very reason. Is that I don't think he is a habitual cheater. I think on Wednesday afternoon out in Los Angeles at Chavez Ravine against the Los Angeles Dodgers, he got ejected for that game for unknowingly, not with intent, but unknowingly violating an MLB rule. That's why you saw after he got ejected screaming at the umpires, Phil Cuzzy and everybody else on the field, that it was just rosin, because Max Scherzer believed that he was combining rosin and sweat along with rubbing alcohol to clean his hands to create a little bit of a better grip on a baseball, which pitchers do need because they're throwing it 97, 98, 99 miles an hour. What you don't want to have happen, based on the memo from Major League Baseball and a crackdown a couple years ago because of spider tack and unnatural spin rates across Major League Baseball for starting pitchers and Major League Baseball relievers, is this. You do not want to have an issue where he is consistently doing that. I don't think Max Scherzer has. So here's the difference. Max Scherzer is not a habitual cheater. He violated MLB memo. He's accepting the 10-game suspension at the urging of the New York Mets. We all need to move forward. He now knows the rule. He understands what needs to happen and what can't happen on a Major League Baseball mound. It should not change the perception of the pitcher, what he has done historically, or affect where Max Scherzer's placing right now is in Major League Baseball, because at his best, he's one of the best starting pitchers in all of the game. For more content like this, download the Better Sports Network app, visit bettersports.com, and at Better Network on all your social media platforms.
Welcome back to the 5-Pack. Next up, the 5 things that will matter. Here's Kyle Elfrink.
And we'll get you that list of 5 coming up in just a bit. Still to come on this edition of the 5-Pack, we will rip open some 1990 ProSet hockey. That's right, a little love for the hockey. John Tavares not in this set, by the way, but there hopefully will be some Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe we'll get a Doug Gilmour. That'd be a nice one to get from the 1990 ProSet. Just heard from Moose there. I want to remind you, coming up after we are done, you can catch a replay of Moose and Keith at 1 o'clock. And then later tonight, I point this out for all of you fantasy football nerds or anybody who just can't get enough of the upcoming NFL draft. Campus to Canton is coming your way tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern right here on BSN. That will be followed by our NFL draft preview at 8 o'clock Eastern tonight. Both those shows kind of focusing on what's going to begin in Kansas City next Thursday with the NFL draft. So keep it tuned right here to Better Sports Network. We will get you set, obviously, next week. Loads of coverage with that draft. But tonight, you can get the Campus to Canton guys. You get the NFL draft preview. That's Eric Balkman and Garrett Price. They're going to be helping you out there. So keep it tuned here for the football. No football in this segment. I gave you a little Jameson Williams news in the previous segment. What's going to matter for today? Well, I'm glad you asked. I got 5 things for you. Got 5 things for you every day to pay attention to the night to come. We will start in San Francisco, where Pete Alonso of the Mets are taking on the Giants in a weekend series. He's trying to make a little April history. Last night, he did it again.
3-2 with nobody out. Lindor at first. Not going. And Pete drives one deep left field. Back goes Wade near the wall, and it's out of here. Pete Alonso with a line drive 2-run homer. Number 9 for Alonso to put the Mets up 2-0. It just stayed high enough to clear that fence in left field. And Pete continues to mash.
He is a beast. The beast of the East.
Up to 9 home runs for Pete Alonso on the season. That ties a Mets franchise record for the most home runs before the end of April. Now, they started on March 30th, so there's a little wiggle room there. You go back in the early days of the Mets, they probably didn't even start playing until like April 10th. So it's not perfect, but still a record, 9 home runs. Mets win last night 9-4. Thank you to SNY for providing that video. With that home run, Alonso is now into 5th place on the all-time home run list for the Mets. And he's only 97 home runs behind Darryl Strawberry, who holds the Mets record. And here's another thing. Tonight he'll play again, looking to set that record, a 10th home run in April against the Giants. It's 10:15 this evening. Anthony Desclafani is who he'll be taking his rips against. I looked it up. Pete Alonso now has 155 home runs in his first 550 games. For comparison, this is a fun comparison too. Babe Ruth, you've heard of him, right? The Babe, Sultan of SWAT, you know who that is, right? His first 533 games, he had 103 home runs. So Pete Alonso is blowing the Babe away. Now, Babe Ruth stuck around and kind of went crazy with 40 home runs here and 50 home runs there. He just kept doing that. So we'll see if Pete can keep doing it. Additionally, again, Pete Alonso, 155 home runs in 550 games. The fastest player to 200 career home runs. It's recent vintage, by the way. The fastest we have ever seen a major league player get to 200 home runs is 658 games. Ryan Howard, another young slugging first baseman out of the NL East, he has that record, 658 games to get to 200 home runs. What we would have to have happen is Pete Alonso hit 45 home runs in his next 107 games, which is a lot to ask of a guy. That would put him at 56 home runs for the season with like over a month to go. He would be well beyond the pace of like Aaron Judge if he were to do that. So I don't think that Pete Alonso is going to catch Ryan Howard. He's not going to be the fastest 200 home runs unless we are in the midst of what's set to be a historical season. So Ryan Howard should rest easy with that. Current odds to lead Major League Baseball in home runs. Right now, Pete Alonso is plus 450. His odds 3 weeks ago were plus 1,100. Did you get in on that? I do recall saying that was one of my favorite season props, is taking Pete Alonso to win the ML home run ticket. This guy he crushes home runs. Ever since he got to the big leagues, home runs. That's what he does. And he got him at better than plus 1,000. Now, he is still number 2, even with the great start, the 9 home runs. Aaron Judge is at plus 300 right now. I think Judge started at 500, so he's even improved his odds. But Pete Alonso has gone from 1,100 to 450. Again, tonight they're going to be in San Francisco. We'll see if Alonso can be the first player in baseball to get to 10 home runs this season. Let's go to our second little item that will matter. Stay right there in New York. Got a big series tonight. Yankees opening up against the Toronto Blue Jays. Let's take a look at the top of the order. We've talked about Anthony Volpe before here on the show. I think it was last week, talking about a quote-unquote slow start. Anthony Volpe, who the world loves Anthony Volpe. There's a lot of push, right? Yeah, Volpe's great. No, Volpe's bad. It's like, you're hot or cold on this dude. I'm not going to make that statement yet. We're 3 weeks into his career. But here's what we got going on. We've got Anthony Volpe playing the part of Billy Hamilton. What do I mean by that? We got a guy who is stealing bases like crazy and really isn't doing anything else. He is playing good defense. I don't think he's making air yet at shortstop. But we're seeing Billy Hamilton part due here. Anthony Volpe is 8 for 8 in stealing bases. Anthony Volpe also has 1 home run, 2 RBIs. He has 7 runs scored. He's a rookie, okay? I'm not asking him to make Cooperstown today. But what you've got is a superstar in one category with his 8 stolen bases, tied for the major league lead. He's 8 for 8 this season. Perfect. Now, hey, stolen bases play. And to Volpe's credit, he has done a wonderful job getting on base. Despite the fact that he is hitting 193, which is pitiful, he's got a 340 plus OBP. Now, again, in fantasy, not many of us score OBP. So what you have here is a 190 hitter with 1 home run and 2 RBIs. That's awfully suspiciously sounding like Billy Hamilton, right? Now, he has 8 stolen bases again. And as long as he's getting on base at a 340 clip and leading off for the Yankees, he'll continue to steal bases. And hey, the book is not written. It's 3 weeks. And frankly, the fact that he has played perfect defense, that he's leading off for the Yankees, and that he's perfect on the base pass, that's good enough for me. It should be good enough for everybody. But as a fantasy player, this is a 1 category producer right now. He's really not doing anything else. More stolen bases than runs scored. You know, that's the column we need to pick up on. You're getting on base at a 340 clip. You're leading off. You're constantly stealing second base. We got to get these runs scored totals up. And it's surprising because you have Judge, you had Stanton, you got LeMahieu. You know, you got a lot of hitters behind you that can drive in runs. Rizzo as well. But we got to get that number picked up. So Volpe tonight is against Toronto. And if you are wondering, Yusei Kikuchi will be pitching for the Blue Jays. Check this out. I looked this up as well. Kikuchi, kind of a veteran, he has thrown over 480 innings in his big league career. He has allowed 18 stolen bases. That is 1 stolen base for every 27 innings of pitching. This is a tough pitcher to steal on. So this will be a fun matchup if we can get Volpe on base, trying to steal against Yusei Kikuchi. He has not allowed a stolen base this year. And again, only 18 of them in over 480 innings in his big league career. Apple TV Plus will have the broadcast tonight, 7:05 for that one with the Yankees and the Blue Jays, kind of an ALE showdown. 7:20 tonight, another thing for you to follow this evening. Gotta love this battle. Maybe the most attractive series of the weekend. It's going to get going in Atlanta. It's going to be Houston visiting the Atlanta Braves. We've got young arm against young arm tonight. It'll be Hunter Brown going for the Astros against Bryce Elder of the Atlanta Braves. And both of these hurlers are looking really good to start the season. If you look at Brown's numbers, he is 2-0 with a 1.93 ERA. He's got 1.02 on the whip. Those numbers play. Check out Bryce Elder. Good numbers too. 2-0, 1.53 ERA with a 1.25 whip. You get a few more strikeouts with Elder as well. They're going to face off tonight at 7:20. Couple of young guns, something for you to follow. Couple of guys who are important as well to the bottom line. You know, Houston is still crossing their fingers for Lance McCullers. We'll see if he ever gets back. But right now, Hunter Brown is filling in and filling in pretty well. His first game was a little rough. The last 2 have been excellent. Bryce Elder has looked good of late. I was looking at some props for this game. The runs total for tonight's game between the Astros and the Braves is at 9. It's pretty well a coin toss on the money line. Houston's -115. Atlanta is -145. As for the 2 pitchers, the K prop, Elder over 4.5 is -135. Brown over 5.5 is +125. Elder to be over 17.5 outs is +100. Hunter Brown over 15.5 outs is -145. And then you can get wins odds. Elder is +200 for the win. Again, he's with the Braves. And Brown is +185 for the Houston Astros. 7:20 tonight in Atlanta. First of 3 between the Astros and the Braves. Tomorrow it's Valdez and Wright between these 2, and then Javier and Fried to finish it off on Sunday. Let's go to our 4th item that will matter. Kansas City, Missouri is where we go. Why are we going to Kansas City? Because the Dominator is going to Kansas City. Shohei Ohtani on the hump. I just want to remind everybody, you want to watch this guy pitch. We talk in the abstract of Shohei Ohtani like we're already bored by what he does. Do not be bored by what he does. He is up against the Royals tonight. It's a very late first pitch, 9:40 Eastern. That's like an 8:40 start in Kansas City, which usually they're starting at like 7 o'clock. So maybe it's a TV thing going on here. But I just want to remind everybody, appreciate Ohtani. Like, he's doing his usual thing. He's dominating this year. Check this out. Going into tonight's game against the Royals, 10 of the last 11 starts that the right-hander has made, he has allowed 0 or 1 earned runs. 10 of his last 11. He's probably due to dominate the Royals too. He faced them one game last year. Might have been his best game of the season. 8 shutout innings, 2 hits allowed, 13 strikeouts, and 1 walk. That was against Kansas City. I think it was like last May, last June. Killed him. Dominated. He is currently, Shohei Ohtani, check out these odds, plus 120 to win AL MVP, plus 120. To win the Cy Young, he is plus 500. He is the number 1 bet to win AL MVP. He's number 2 to win the Cy Young. Garrett Cole's the only guy ahead of him in the American League Cy Young race. Just wanted to remind you, Shohei Ohtani. If you get a chance, you watch him. Odds for him, since I gave them for Elder and Brown. Ohtani, over 7.5 Ks, minus 105. Over 18.5 outs, which would be getting at least 1 out in the 6th inning, plus 125. And then to get the win, I said Elder, plus 200. I said Hunter Brown, plus 185. You'll find a lot of that with starting pitchers if you're betting on the win. Ohtani tonight is minus 115 to get the win. And I can't really call out that number. It makes total sense. 100% sense. 5th and final thing will take us to the hardwood. Let's move away from the grass. Let's go to the basketball court. Let's talk about Game 3 tonight in Madison Square Garden. It's a biggie between the Cavaliers and the Knicks. Knicks won Game 1. Cavaliers came back and won Game 2. Right now, the Knicks are favored by 1.5 as they return home. The over-under for this game is really low, 211.5. ABC is going to have the coverage tonight, 8:30 Eastern. I think of all the hockey and all the basketball tonight, this is probably the most interesting game that we have taking place in the postseason. What's going to matter here is a couple of things. Number one, Cleveland does an awesome job of slowing the pace down, like a crazy good job. And in Game 2, they did that. And this is really a battle of 2 types of styles. Cleveland loves to slow it down defensively. They're one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. I think they were number 1 this year in points allowed per possession. Now, the Knicks, offensively, the Knicks were number 3 in points scored per possession. So you have one of the best offensive teams on a possession basis, per possession basis, versus one of the best defensive teams. In Game 2, Cleveland dominated on the defensive end. Evan Mobley was huge on that. They started to throw doubles at Jalen Brunson. I would suspect they're going to throw doubles at Brunson again, who is kind of the key component of everything the Knicks want to do. And the guy who's got to step up, if they're going to bring doubles to Brunson, that's going to leave Emmanuel Quickly open. Quickly's been really quiet in these first 2 games. He's probably the guy I would look at and say, there's your X factor, is Emmanuel Quickly. So the Knicks, Game 3, they are the home team against Cleveland tonight. Should be a lot of fun. Julius Randle, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, who I mentioned, Jared Allen. Cavaliers go kind of with that Twin Towers arrangement in the paint. Some good stuff there. Again, 8:30 tonight, ABC will have the coverage. Those are the 5 things that will matter for this evening. Now let's get you a little more NBA talk, shall we? Ricky Props has his thoughts on the Friday night to come.
Hey, it's Rick Kamla, a.k.a. Ricky Props for Better Sports Network. Let's go to the wood with Jason Tatum at Atlanta tonight, over 29.5, minus 125. Here comes the eruption game. 25 on 44% in Game 1, 29 on 55% in Game 2, over 30 tonight. Jalen Brunson at home against the Cavs, over 23.5, minus 140. Bounce back alert. He had 20 on 29% shooting in Game 2, 27 in Game 1, 25 against Cleveland during the year. Emmanuel Quickly versus the Cavs, over 11.5 points, minus 125. Brogdon just won 6th man. Here comes the snub game. 3 in Game 1, 12 in Game 2, 15 plus tonight. Jokic at Minnesota over 8.5 dimes, minus 130. 9 dimes last game, 12.5 against Minnesota during the year, and they allow the most assists to centers. Go to bettersports.com and on demand with the Better Sports Network app, and hit us up at Better Network on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
Time now for the Daily Pack Rip on the 5-Pack with Kyle Elfrink.
I give it up to our producer, Heather Clyde. She's digging deep on those Pearl Jam music bumps. I love it. Good stuff. One of my favorites right there. The opening track off of the Lightning Bolt album, Getaway. I like that. Heather doesn't settle for the ones that everybody goes with. She gives us Getaway. Nice work there, Heather Klein. Great work by her all day long, all week long. We've enjoyed our time with Heather Klein, who pretty well knocks it out of the ballpark each and every day here on the 5-Pack. Kyle Elfrink back with you on the Better Sports Network. Great stuff there from our man, Rick Kamla. A lot of good props there. We will finish off, as we always do, with a pack rip. Here's what we're doing today. A little hockey, right? The hottest cards on ice. 1990 ProSet. Now, ProSet, which was, I think, out of Plano, Texas, they also made NFL cards. I don't believe they never made baseball cards. Don't think they ever made basketball. They were kind of just a football, hockey kind of thing. So we're going to open these up today. 15 cards that are in here. These are not a very attractive set. I noted this earlier. This is a set with a ton of airs all over the place. It's almost like they said, guys, we're gonna start a hockey set, and we want to make some cards, and we need to put them out on the market in 2 weeks. And everybody scrambled, and there were the expected screw ups. Like, there's a lot. I don't know what's a lot. There's probably upwards of like 75 screw ups in these cards. Like 1 out of every 9 cards, there's some sort of error with ProSet. I noted this earlier. It's a massive set. I mean, it's a giant set for hockey. It's like 700 cards. It is so big that I saw a number this morning. I was looking up some information on this. There's something like 230 rookie cards in ProSet 1990. Tons of them. Now, that doesn't mean they have 230 cards that are, 10 of those guys you care about. But this, of course, was so overproduced that even those guys don't pull huge numbers. The most valuable card in this set is not even a card. There is a hologram of the Stanley Cup, Lord Stanley's chalice. There's a hologram in here that if you pulled it as a perfect PSA 10, you're looking at like $17,000. So if I pull one, I won't be here Monday, okay? Probably won't be here Tuesday. Probably be flying to Vegas if I pull one. 1990 ProSet. Let's get rolling. I'm going to look at all these and see if we got errors, even though I don't really know what I'm looking for. We will start with a goaltender for the New York Islanders, Glenn Healy. Pretty good goaltender. And like many in the 1990s, he was working on a mullet. That was kind of the thing you did. Healy originally signed as a free agent with the LA Kings, eventually ended up with the Islanders. This was year number 1 for him. I think he went on to some big things with the Islanders, played pretty well in some postseasons there, but he will lead us off. Man, check out those old goalie pads. Leather, right? Yeah, brown leather. And I know they're still leather, but that's like heavy leather. That's like real leather. That's not like anti-sweat and anti-moisture. That there is like a whole cow that is on Glenn Healy's legs. Seriously. You get done with a hockey game there, and it's like, oh my God, my legs, they weigh 40 extra pounds all of a sudden. Left winger for the Chicago Blackhawks, Steve Thomas. There he is. Steve Thomas, who was a part of those upper lines, like line 1, line 2, a lot of times with Jeremy Roenick. You'd find Steve Thomas up there. Coming off the 89-90 season, 76 games, 70 points. He was a usual 60 to 70 point producer. Here's a name you know. Here's a legend. Here's a guy also wearing pure leather pads. Patrick Waugh, which I always wonder to myself. There's probably some youngsters in the audience, people who are, 12 years old. They're saying, no, Kyle, you're wrong. That says Roy. Oh, not the French way of saying it, dear youngster. Patrick Roy. I remember that back in the day. That was always a difficult thing to figure out. It was like introduction to French, at least my introduction to French. Patrick Roy, not Roy. French Canadian, Kyle. There is such a thing. Won a Stanley Cup there with Montreal. Went to Colorado. Won another one. Glenn Wesley making an appearance. He was a forward. I think he played some time here with St. Louis with the Blues. And you'll notice a little bit of action in these cards. Again, in the late 80s, early 90s, the key was we're going to shake things up by bringing some action to the cards. And you can see in the background there, see that blue jersey? That's the Quebec Nordiques. No longer with us. They're now the Colorado Avalanche. But you notice the fleur-de-lis there, the blue and white fleur-de-lis. Play in Quebec. The Nordiques, who I was in Quebec City, gosh, about 4.5 years ago, and there is still a lot of Nordiques paraphernalia bouncing around in that town. We get our third goalie. So what have we done? 5 cards, and we've gotten 3 goalies. We have Glenn Healy, Patrick Roy, and we continue our tour of the NHL Eastern Conference by going with Andy Moog. Andy Moog, who was quite a goaltender for Boston. He led them, I think, to a Stanley Cup final, too. Let's see. Boston made it all the way to the finals. He was runner-up to Patrick Roy in the Vezina Trophy. This was 89-90. The Bruins, I guess, made the Stanley Cup finals maybe around then. Andy Moog was a big part of that. So there you go. 3 goalies. Okay, here's a fun name to say. Vincent Damphousse, Toronto Maple Leafs. See, I told you we'd get a Maple Leafs. We're kind of going Maple Leaf crazy here on the 5-pack. Vincent Damphousse. Here's another French Canadian. So see, you'd learn all sorts of things growing up with these hockey names. But Ben Damphousse, pretty good with Toronto. He bounced around later. Daniel Shank, I can tell you I don't know much about this. I will say this might be one of those cards that is an heir. And why is it an heir? You'll notice, let's see, let's look at the Blackhawks. Blackhawks card, you got a red top. Blackhawks are red. You notice with Boston, got a yellow top. Boston being in yellow. Canadiens, blue top. Check out our Red Wings. It's a white top. Now, the bottom is black. You could have gone with a black top. I realize your emblem is red, so they probably wanted to stay away from the same color emblem. But you'll notice with Toronto, they did blue on blue. But here with the Red Wings, maybe it's an heir. You never know. A lot of heirs in this set. I don't know all of them. But I do know there's a lot of coloring heirs found in this set. Sylvain Turgeon. Man, you'd think the entire NHL in 89 and 90 was a bunch of French Canadians. It was a lot of them, but not a ton of them. Sylvain Turgeon. What do you think of those Devils unis? Like them? Yeah, I think so. The red and the green, it works. The Christmas tree look, it works. Neil Broughton showing up here. Neil Broughton, number 7. I want to say when I was fooling around today, for some reason, was Neil Broughton one of the air cards? Kind of feel like he might have been. I don't see anything. Neil Broughton, I think it is. Looks like the numbers are the same. I don't know. We'll have to check. Maybe Heather can do a quick run through. Neil Broughton. I feel like I saw this as one of the air cards, but I have no idea what the air is. Here is a legend. My gosh, we have maybe the best goaltender of the 80s and 90s in Patrick Roy. And now we have one of the best centers of the 80s and 90s, Mark Messier. Still hanging out with us on ESPN's coverage of the NHL. Of course, now when you look at Messier, there's one thing missing that was not missing in 89-90. In 89-90, look at that. He still has hair. This is Mark Messier pre-shave it all off. Once he got to New York, he pretty well shaved it all off once he got to the Rangers, led them to that title. But that's what Mark Messier looks like with hair, if you were ever wondering. There it is. Kind of like that card, too. This is like the perfect card to get autographed. You got the player centered. He's in a classic jersey. You see his face. There's a little movement going on with the card. This works. I like this. It should be noted with ProSet as we pull a Theo Fleury. This guy For those who don't know Theo Fleury, let me get this right. 5'6". This guy was the original pest. Absolute pest. Martin St. Louis, remember him with Tampa Bay? I think he was even bigger than Theo Fleury. 5'6", and this guy could score. I'm looking at it. Let's see. He had just had his first real breakout season with Calgary. He played 80 games and got 66 points. He would actually go up and up and up from here. Theron Fleury, but he went by Theo. He was a fun player to watch. Real dynamo for Calgary. What I was getting at with the cards is ProSet didn't have like borders on the side, really. You know, kind of would let the image breathe a bit. Here's another guy, won some Stanley Cups, good defenseman, Paul Coffey, part of those Lemieux and Yager years. Also, I think he played with, did he get over to Boston maybe later? Maybe so. What is the guy doing in the background here? What do you guys think? See that guy in the background with his hat on? What's he looking at? Now, if I didn't know any better, I'd say, oh, Kyle, he's looking at his cell phone, right? That's what you'd say. In 2023, you'd say, oh, Kyle, it's obvious he's looking at his cell phone. No cell phones, right? Unless this is like some screw up in the Matrix. And this is actually a guy who appeared in a game in 1990 as a fan and was looking at his cell phone. Maybe he's just rubbing his hands together. I don't know. I think he's a time traveler myself. All-star cards. How about that? Wow, our second Mark Messier. That's an all-star card, so I guess we call it a different card. Here's another angle of Mark Messier with hair. There you go. It says fun facts and figures, or all-star facts and figures. The Wales Conference scored the fastest 4 goals in 4 minutes and 26 seconds during the 1980 All-Star game in Detroit. 4 goals in 4 minutes. Even the Maple Leafs don't give up that many goals in the playoffs. A couple of more cards to go here. Another All-Star, Brian Propp, who appears to be nothing more than a prop when this photo was taken. I mean, really? You go to the All-Star game, and I don't think Brian Propp made many All-Stars. This is the photo we get? I mean, handsome guy, but oh my God, the back photo's the same. Look at that. Same exact photo. Embarrassing ProSet. We get another goalie, another one in the Eastern Conference, Darren Poopa, who was not to be confused with the Grand Poopa of the Flintstones. This is Darren Poopa, who played for the Buffalo Sabres. So there you go. I've noticed here on the back, check out the bottom. ProSet really got into the French stuff. How tall is Darren Poopa? You mean how grandeur? What is pounds? What is that? What is pounds in French? Poids. Maybe it's poids. And then what position? That would be gardien de but. Gardien de but. So see, you get these cards produced out of Dallas, Texas, and they give you a bunch of French on the back. Kids nowadays, they don't get the bilingual thing. Hell, all they get is a bunch of glossy and spruced up cards. There's no information, no stats. Back in the day, we got those things. There it is. That's our pack rip. It's a fun one. Better than I would have guessed. A lot of goalies, a couple of Mark Messier cards. I didn't notice any big airs in this card set. Maybe I'll look over the weekend and find some. That'll do it for us. We are back on Monday. More of the 5-pack, 12 Eastern on BSN.